I'm a nasty woman because I am the actual stereotype right now of an angry woman approaching her period, and I wouldn't fuck with me today.
I wouldn't fuck with you ever. Not just today. I'm a nasty woman because I wouldn't fuck with Aaron Brown.
Hell yeah, I'm Aaron Brown.
And I am Nagar Fanouni, and this is Nasty Woman Radio, wherein today we are discussing the lie of having your shit together. And this topic comes to us from a listener
Mhm.
who expressed being in her mid-20s and feeling this pressure to have her life made, have it all together, seeing the comparison of shit all over social media, but not really having any honest expressions from people in their 30s and beyond talking about what it was really like during that time. And I think that there's a lot of pressure for millennials today, a lot more than there was when we were in our 20s. Partially due to social media, but I think a lot of that is just due to like the rise of entrepreneurial endeavors and more non-traditional work, and how that is becoming something that is more commonplace. And so I think there's a lot of pressure to like be, you know, uh, be an expert in your field or build your own business
Be a
or,
brand as a
exactly.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I feel fortunate all the time. And I think we've discussed this before that social media was not a part of my junior high, high school, and even college. Like, if I wanted to see what my ex-boyfriend was doing, I had to old school roll up to his house. Not proud of that.
Yeah.
Totally did that.
But it was so much less,
I didn't
when
have
you think
constant
about,
access to it.
no, when you broke up with somebody, you could just be done.
Yeah.
You didn't have this like thing at your fingertips to see what they were doing and then do this deep dive into like, because with Instagram, like it's not just what they posted. You can look at pictures they're tagged in, and
In the
then you can look at,
location they're at.
yes, and then you can look at the people who posted those pictures and scroll through that person's feed to see if there's any more hint of what's going on. There's a
Right.
whole addiction that can take place because you have everything at your fingertips. So it's certainly a landscape that I think requires a lot more navigation.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of comparison, like I was busy in my 20s comparing myself to women that my ex-boyfriend was interested in. I spent a lot of time obsessed with my ex-boyfriend in college. It's not something I'm super proud of, but that is honest.
Well,
That's what happened. So that's what I was doing. So that was like maybe, 3 or 4 women at a time that I was aware of, right? Not like comparing myself to every photo he liked or everyone under the hashtag outfit of the day or whatever, let alone like knowing what I was going to do with my life. And in my 20s, I felt very set about what I was going to do with my life. I wanted to be a social worker since I was in junior high. But even that started to get real confusing as I started taking internships and had social work jobs. And suddenly the only things that felt certain about my life felt not just unattainable, but not sure if I wanted them. Most of my 20s, I was wildly depressed. Especially like my early 20s and that college period before Lola came in my mid 20s. That changed things.
Yeah, for sure.
What were you doing in your early 20s?
Well, I joined the Air Force when I was 19. I was in college. Because I was in college when 9/11 happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember feeling I was kind of lost in college anyway. I always knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know how that was going to shake out or what that looked like. So I was like bouncing back and forth between majoring in English and will that actually get me anywhere? And majoring in journalism, but do I actually want to be a journalist? Or do I want to do creative writing or creative nonfiction? Like, how does this want to shake out for me? All I knew that I wanted to do was write, and I didn't have any guidance from my parents. Growing up in a Middle Eastern family of immigrants, the expectation was always that you will be successful and you will go to college and you will be like their definition of a successful person, but there was no guidance as to how to accomplish that. So I was always just kind of trying to figure it out on my own. And I was in college, 9/11 happened, and I was already feeling very sort of lost and didn't have any direction or any guidance. And that was an emotional pull for me in terms of like, patriotic duty, being a child of immigrants and seeing how much this country afforded to my parents to be able to come here from Iran and like really become, successful from like from what they consider to be successful. My dad was a mechanical engineer. My mom's a physical therapist. They put themselves through school. They became very successful in their careers. And so feeling that sort of duty as someone who was privileged to be born here. Like I could have just as easily been born in Iran and not have, the freedoms that I have here. It felt like a strong pull, especially because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing anyway.
Yeah.
So it just kind of felt like, well, I'm not doing anything anyway, so I might as well go do this.
Yeah.
It's pretty much how it went down. So yeah, I joined the Air Force when I was 19. Prior to joining the Air Force, I was a personal trainer. So when I got out of the Air Force, right before I had Isaac, I was 23 and I decided to go back to work and be a personal trainer because it was what I knew. It was so funny because like I started personal training, not because I was like so passionate about being a personal trainer. I started personal training because I liked working out and I was going to college and I needed a job to support myself. And I was like, well, I'm always at the gym anyway, so I might as well work at the gym. That's pretty much like how that went down.
So lots of really thoughtful picking.
There was honestly, if I can look at my 20s, I kind of just went with the flow on everything. I never had a plan. I never knew what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. But I really didn't know what I was doing. And as circumstances changed, I just adapted my plan to the change of circumstances. I got out of the military and was like, what do I do now? I could have taken a government job easily with my qualifications, with my military qualifications and my language qualifications. And I would have been making great money, but I would have been doing something that I didn't enjoy. And it would have meant putting my baby in daycare full time. And the alternative was I can go back to the gym, I can build a personal training business, a flexible schedule, and I get to spend more time with my son, which is what I wound up doing. And I wound up building, just completely by accident, a very successful training business. And that was pretty much how I spent the bulk of my 20s. But what I learned from that was that there was a lot of pressure when I made that decision from my family to get a stable job. There was a lot of pressure to take a government job with benefits, with a guaranteed salary, all that, this rigid sort of lifestyle that I really didn't want. There was a lot of pressure to do that because it was the responsible thing, because it was, the successful thing. It was like the thing you're supposed to do. And I chose instead to commit fully to being a personal trainer. And I gave myself a deadline. I said, if I gave myself a 6-month deadline to have X amount of clients, which would have equated to the amount of money I needed per month to take care of myself and Isaac, because I was a single mom. And I said, if I don't get this many clients by this period of time, and I'm not making the money that I need to make in order to support myself and my son, then I'll go back and get a government job. So I moved forward with something that was really risky and scary, but something that I knew was going to be better for me, because I knew that I could always go back to the old way if I wanted to. And I really think that that's the most important thing that I learned from my 20s, is that like, you can always go back.
Yeah.
You can always go back. If I needed to, like even now as an entrepreneur, as a writer, I know that like, if I really need to, I can go back to the gym and I can work full time as a personal trainer and I can make good money, or I can get an office job, or I can work at a restaurant. Like I learned really early on as a single mom supporting myself without like parental support, that I can do whatever it takes, but I'm not going to settle for whatever it takes from the get-go. I'm going to go for what I want. And then if that doesn't work out, I can always go back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, decisions are not necessarily permanent. Some of them are. But for the most part, especially when thinking about what you're doing with your career, there's a lot of wiggle room. And most people who I know that are happy with what they do have changed their minds, or that things evolved or changed course at some point. Somebody just asked what I was like in college the other day, and it was the first time that I reflected back at that time and liked who that person was, you know,
Mm.
who I was then.
Mm-hmm.
But I played rugby. I was a slam poet. I was an activist that people hated, but because I was using my voice in big ways.
And
And
now you're an activist that people love.
and hate.
Mostly love.
I hope
I would say
love.
mostly love.
I get a lot of lovely feedback. Certainly more than in Nebraska. It was not well received by anyone. Really, it wasn't a fun time that way. But I was really depressed a lot, and I smoked a lot of pot, which I'm not opposed to. But it was my lifestyle, and not like something
my life
that was
now.
adding. It was just like I was sad. And I had this like room that was covered in red fabric and stuff. Like this layer of mine where I would smoke, and I would watch Sex and the City, and I would write bad poetry, and I would avoid going to class and seeing people, and then I would go out at night. And it was this like loop cycle of just like disappointing people and then trying to avoid the people that I was disappointing. Meanwhile, I was getting by in classes. I was always smart enough to like do well on the tests and turn in decent projects. But I went to a really small school where attendance was a big component of the grade. Because when there's only like 15 people in your class, they really want you to show up and participate in the conversation. So my grades were awful. I was expelled academically in college because of attendance. So it was a rough time. I had to like petition to the school to let me back in, and say that I would get therapy and medication for depression, which I did. And then I hated my therapist and I hated the medication. So I took myself off of them and continued to spiral out. I mean, that's, and I made some great art in there, and I did some things I'm really proud of, but I was really just kind of like exploring the depths of myself. And I couldn't for the life of me picture a future with me in it, which is sad. But that's where I was at in my early 20s, was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel valuable or valued, and I'm going to do my best to make it by. You know?
Yeah.
And then my business was similar. So I was a social worker for a long time and didn't graduate from school, but most of the jobs that I got in social work piggybacked off of other jobs. I had a lot of experience. And had Lola and personal
training. How old were you when you had Lola?
24.
Okay, so we're right around the same.
And I continued to work in social work for a while. I considered nursing school because I was working in psych wards, and the nurses made like triple what I was making running group therapies and stuff. And thought, you know, what could I like? And meanwhile, was really passionate about exercise and started a personal training business on accident, and then realized I was just writing, and sort of similar to you, just like snowballed into what I'm doing now. But one of the things about this email that I thought was kind of funny, not of her, but my perception of it, is this idea that like we're ahead and like have it together, and to look back at when I didn't. And I feel like where I'm ahead of myself in my 20s is in my understanding of myself, my understanding of what is good for me and what isn't good for me, trusting my gut, letting go of people and situations that don't serve me, and not, you know, committing to an idea so hard that I follow through with shit that's not for me anymore. You know, like that kind of stuff comes easier. But like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. This morning, I was like crying on my couch about this lady sending me an email calling me a loser that I don't know.
That email didn't even make any sense.
No, it didn't make any sense. And that's not personal. I know the mindset problem I was having, but like that doesn't mean that I don't have a shit morning where I'm about to have my period.
But here's the difference. And here's the difference that I would say is the major difference for me from my 20s to my 30s, is that you knew what the mindset issue was. You were able to name it, but you allowed yourself to lean into it and feel it.
Yes.
And that's the major difference that I feel now in my 30s. Like, I'm going to be 35 in a month, but I've been saying that I'm 35 for like the last 6 months. So
just claiming it.
As soon as I get to like 6 months of my birthday, I start just saying I'm that age.
So you're
Because
ready?
it just feels like it just feels like I'm already there, and like saying the age before it just feels ridiculous. Like 9, I started saying I was 30 like pretty much like 6 months before my birthday. And then when I turned 30, I was like, wait, am I 30 or 31? Because like I think I was already 30. I don't know. Sometimes my son has to remind me.
My
He
husband
knows how
never
old
knows how old he is. I have to tell
No.
him. We've
Oh,
argued
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And he was
He's
born
like,
in 80. Like, it's not
that's
hard math.
really easy. Yeah, it's really easy. Like, you're 37, Jamal.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. So my sister was born in 80 as well. So she's going to be 37. Sometimes when I tell people, like when I'm talking to people at the gym, because I never know, totally off topic, but I never know how old anybody is. I'm like, because I just always assume everybody's, quote, my age, whatever that means,
Right.
like within 10 years, one way or the other, because you just like, you get to an age, I think in your 30s, where you start connecting with people within like a sphere of ages.
Yes.
It's not just like everybody's my age. It's like I have friends who are 25 and very emotionally mature, and friends who are 45, so it's like I've got all these different friends. So I'll say like, how old are you or whatever, and then I'll like, instead of saying like how old I am, I'll say like what year I was born. So I'll be like, oh, I'm 82. And then I'm like, wait, no,
I'm not 82.
I'm not 82 years old. I mean,
you look
my
great.
skincare regimen is good, but it's not that good. But I was born in 1982. Anyway, the point being that I'm almost 35, and the big difference between being 35 and being 25 is that when I start to feel things creep up, like insecurities, victim mentality is a big one for me. Having my major triggers that I really started to uncover towards the end of my 20s being abandonment, and rejection and being left out. Those were like the big triggers for me. And I started to identify those as I started to move into my 30s. Now, when I feel them, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
And so they don't take root, and I don't spiral, and I don't like lose control or allow it to necessarily affect my mood for a duration. But I do let myself feel it, and I do let myself cry, and I do let myself just like wallow in it for a little bit and give myself kind of like a little like wallow period.
Yeah.
All the while knowing that it's temporary, because I know what's happening. And I really think from all the women that I've spoken to who are around our age or older, that's really the major thing that I think changes, is that knowing of yourself, and that being able to name the feelings, name the emotions, name what's happening, name the triggers. There's a lot of power in being able to do that.
Yeah. And it's not just like this morning for me in my 20s would have been just me sitting in like, I am the worst ever. And instead I'm like, okay, I know. I'm really feeding into her loser thing because something's happening with me emotionally. I should probably figure out what that is, because this is not my normal behavior. This is not something I would normally pay attention to. Let me do some investigation. I know it's normal and not for me. I know I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was lamenting some cycle that she found herself in, and said, and I know that this comes from my mom, and just like named like 5 layers of things she knew about, but she's still working on it. And I just like couldn't stop laughing, because I'm like, this is what it's like to be in your 30s. You're like, yes, this is a mom issue. I did a meditation. I'm still doing a thing.
I'm still fucking pissed about it.
Yeah, I'm working
Still
on
upset,
it, but I've identified these things about it.
Yep.
I'm not mad at the lady at the grocery store. I'm angry at my mother from when I was 5. It's fine.
Yep. And I think the major thing that changes too is that like when you're in your 20s, there's this unspoken expectation of like, you're supposed to like party and have fun and like find yourself, but you're also not supposed to like mooch off of your parents. Right. And you know what I mean? Like it's a really weird dichotomy, because you're supposed to have it all figured out, right? You're supposed to be like on this professional track and go to college and get a job and have a 401k and all this other bullshit. but you're also expected to like have fun and party and like be a millennial and all this other bullshit. Whereas what I feel like in my 30s, there's a lot more freedom to just like decide. And so if you know that you can have that in your 30s, I think you can create that space no matter how old you are, you know, no matter what decade you fall into, like creating that space. The major thing that's changed for me is that when my life was really messy in my 20s, it didn't feel okay for it to be messy. It felt like I was there's the feeling of supposed to. And I think a lot of that was ruled by like feelings of perfection, because we do live in a society where perfection is lauded as, you know, a virtue, right? But people brag about being perfectionists. And I think that with the rise of social media, specifically Instagram, where everything is beautiful and every picture is filtered and, you know, and all of that, and you're seeing all these people with these perfect lives. Like, do you follow, like, I follow a couple house accounts where there's like beautiful houses. You know, it's like they just post pictures of their house, like their interior design and whatever. I've had to unfollow them because I'm just like, whose house is always that clean?
People who don't live there.
How is your house always that perfect? Like, I am constantly vacuuming up dog hair. My blinds are always like filthy. There's always grease on my microwave, like no matter what, because it's right above my stove.
Yeah.
You know, my plants are always dying. Like I have dog vomit stains all over my comforter, you know, and I'm just like, whose house is always this clean? And finally I had to stop unfollowing these accounts because I'm just like, nobody's house is always this clean. And I'm just like making myself feel like it's not okay to be messy because I'm looking at this, you know what I mean? So like, that's a feeling that you can have when you look at all these things that are perfect, right? Like this unattainable ideal of perfection. And I think when you look at that and you're in your 20s and you're just trying to figure yourself out and you don't know who you are and you don't know where you're going, there is that tendency to lean towards that's supposed to be, to look at everything around you that's perfect and put together and think that's how it's supposed to be. And I think when you get past that, when you get over that hill, whatever that is, whether it's getting into your 30s or your 40s or just having a moment of clarity and, you know, a period of enlightenment, there's this acceptance of the messy. There's this like, not only an acceptance of it, but like a welcoming of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm into the messy. I dig the messy.
Yeah.
Give me all the mess.
Because you're choosing your own priorities and not just thinking about, you know, all of the various pressures you feel as to what you're supposed to be doing. I'm cleaner than I've ever been, which is funny. It's not if you're looking at me. I mean, this is pretty clean, but the couch is.
Hey.
This is a mess for me.
But it looks like people live there.
It does look like they do.
Is the thing. And
I'm cleaner than I used to be. I was not clean in my 20s. My skincare regime is on point. My self-care regime is on point. You know, I have a lot of things together that I didn't then, that would have been so useful. But I think I spent so much of my time in my head about what I was supposed to be doing. And a big one for me that I don't think I can really clearly identify where it came from because it's so insidious is that I thought I was supposed to find a husband. Like that was my primary goal. And so if I could like impart any advice to my 20-something self, it would be to stop auditioning for relationships. Like,
oh, girl, yes.
Because I was just trying so hard. Like, love me. Look, what if I lose weight? What if I wear this outfit? What if I dance like this? What if I'm a cool girl? What if I gave a boyfriend a hall pass once that he could like sleep with somebody else if he needed to. Which is fine. Relationships work all different ways, but I was doing that because I thought that he deserved to also have sex with beautiful women.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it's not like positive, open-minded relationship. I was just doing anything I could to convince people that I was worth sticking around for.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know where that pressure came from. I've always had lots of friends. I've always been valued by women in my life. I don't know.
Well, I think that from discussing with a lot of women in their 30s, the major theme in our 20s was in some way, shape, or form hustling for our worthiness, right? And so that was how you manifested that, you
Yeah.
know? For me, I hustled for my worthiness through being obsessed with my body,
Mm-hmm.
like completely obsessed with my body, to like devoting all of my time and energy and resources, mental, emotional, tangible, towards the pursuit of fat loss and even being strong, you know, being small and strong. That was like the major goal for me in my 20s. And I remember taking, you know, Isaac grew up coming to the gym with me because I worked at the gym and I spent most of my time there. And I remember there were times where, you know, I'd bring him to the gym with me. And he'd have to be there during my workouts and he would distract me and I would get frustrated and I would yell at him. And I think that that's the thing that I'm least proud of. And I don't want to say I'm ashamed of it because shame is not a feeling that I'm willing to nurture. But it's something that I look back on and I think, wow, like how far I've come and how much I've grown in that period of time. Hustling for my worthiness was so wrapped up in my body image that I would sacrifice my relationship with my son in pursuit of that in some way. Whereas now Isaac comes to CrossFit with me sometimes on the weekends and he plays and I play and I don't care if my workouts get disrupted. And sometimes I design workouts that we can do together, you know, and it's just like, it's just so much more fun now when you don't have that pressure, you know, there's no pressure anymore. There's no need to hustle for my worthiness or look a certain way or adhere to a certain standard. And in doing that, I freed up a lot of space for connection, which is what you're doing in the first place when you're hustling for your worthiness, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you're just trying so desperately to connect, to belong, to be wanted, to be worthy, to be desired. And when you can actually step back from that and realize that you're already worthy of those things, it frees up the space to actually be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh my God. My bachelorette party, this is what this makes me think of. I had a backyard wedding. I had a 1-year-old. It was very small and wonderful. And so my bachelorette party was just me and a couple of my friends, and we went to the kind of college bar that I would have never gone to in college, but like a dance club with like a lot of, short like jean skirts and like girls get up and dance on the bar kind of stuff. Yeah. And just like known for serving underage people, like that kind of place. So I took my friends there because I was like, we gotta do this. And my friend made me one of those sashes that said bachelorette out of toilet paper. So we're doing real low budge.
Classy. Class. All class.
Yes. And these girls kept coming up to me and being like, oh my God, are you getting married? And I kept giving these mini speeches about how they would attract someone who liked them when they liked themselves. That's when I got wasted. And just kept giving that speech. But that's actually how Jamal popped in the picture, because I finally gave up on proving myself. I finally gave up on finding someone, and I just became like staunchly independent, which is what he was attracted to. And I was mean to him, actually, which is a story for another day. But I thought he had a girlfriend because he did the last time I'd seen him. And so I was a real jerk about it, because I wasn't auditioning for anybody. I was like, I've had enough grief here, which is sort of, I think, how I got over most of my insecurities from my 20s, is that I had just like beaten that dead horse so hard that it was like, screw it. Like, this isn't working. I've tried so hard for so long, and I also obsessed over my body. I just didn't do it in ways that actually made much impact on my body. I lost some weight and gained it again, but I didn't get into fitness. I just got into obsession.
Well, I got in to be fair, my fitness was also obsession.
Yeah, you were doing it and I was thinking about doing it. So there were different outcomes physically to the obsession. So yeah, I think that's what was really useful about my early 20s, is that I spent time really diving into my insecurities. I did not spend my time in classes or doing the things I was supposed to do. Instead, I was just like, no, I will be depressed. I will hate myself and explore every inch of this territory. I will smoke this joint and watch Sex in the City and hate my life. And I got over it. Like, I just went hardcore until I got over it.
You know, the major thing for me, I think that helped me sort of get over it, like sort of get through. Well, there were two things. One was, I remember, I think I was like 29, the first time I read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge game changer for me because I had never considered the fact that I was a perfectionist. It was something I just didn't know that I was. You know, I didn't know that I was putting that pressure on my son to be perfect. I didn't know that I did that in relationships. You know, I didn't know that I was putting that pressure on myself. Like, I didn't realize, for me, I know where that comes from. And in coming into my 30s, doing that practice of becoming a recovering perfectionist, I uncovered where that came from. In my situation, it was because growing up with my sister, who's 2 years older than me, she has ADD. And when we were kids, having ADD wasn't like how it is now, you know, where people use it as a colloquial term. It was a thing that like people didn't really understand. And most kids with ADD were termed stupid or problematic. Or, you know what I mean? Like they were problem kids. They were, you know, so there wasn't a lot of support for that. And I saw my parents who, you know, who were going through a divorce, and then there was all this drama with my mom. And I saw my parents just going through this struggle with my sister, you know, with her grades, with her getting into trouble, with, you know, just like all these things. And there was a lot of pressure on me to not be a problem. There's a lot of pressure on me, whether they put it on me or I put it on myself, because I thought, you know, if I can be good and perfect and get good grades and never get into trouble and, you know, be quiet and small and like just do as I'm told, then they'll love me because they'll have the time and energy to pay attention to me. Yeah. You know, but if I cause problems, then, you know, they're not going to have, they're already preoccupied with my sister. So they're not going to have, you know, any time and energy to pay attention to me, which, I mean, they never did anyway. So it's just, again, hustling for my worthiness at a very young age. And I saw where that came from. And so reading Brene Brown's work and learning about perfectionism and choosing to become a recovering perfectionist and uncovering and unpacking where that feeling came from was really powerful for me. And I really think that that was the thing that started to propel me more into like showing up authentically. And just being who I am as opposed to who I think I'm supposed to be. I don't know if that just comes with age or if it comes with the spiritual, emotional maturity to be able to unpack all your bullshit.
Yeah. Also for me, cultivating the kinds of relationships where I'm not curating my person, you know, where I say how I'm actually feeling and not the version of that feels acceptable, you know?
Yeah.
And honest relationships where I have things reflected back at me. Like, one of my friends told me I was dramatic a couple of years ago.
You are.
I know. I didn't know that about
Isn't that
myself.
Great? I think it's great.
I hated it at first because that's one of those words we attach to women in a negative way, like drama queen, you know. And I am a fucking drama queen. It's what makes me great at what I do. But I have to really sit with that. And also see where that turns up in my life in a way that's negative. Like if I'm dramatic about being frustrated with my husband in an argument with him, that's not very useful. You know?
Yeah.
So
no.
But having relationships wherein the context is they love me and anything I say does not change that, and we can be honest with each other and to just be seen and heard and loved anyway is big. And it's something that I think we aspire to give our children. But a lot of us don't end up getting that, cultivating honest relationships with our family members. And so when you actually get to have that, I think it at least helps me develop a sense of confidence that not only do I like myself, but there's a possibility that if I'm my whole self, other people can appreciate that too.
Absolutely. I would say one of the big things that I learned easing out of my 20s and into my 30s was that it was okay to be vulnerable. I've always been a really emotional and really sensitive person, but I've always kept that to myself and always kept that like really locked up. Like when I was a kid, I was bullied a lot in school. I didn't really have a lot of friends. And that was when I started writing. So I'm actually really thankful for that when I think about that. And I remember I was so emo. I would like lock my door and light candles and play Morrissey and just like write in my journal and cry. And my dad was always worried about me. He was always just like, what is she doing in there? Why isn't she like at the mall? You know, like normal kids her age, or like going to sleepovers, you know? And I always kind of kept that stuff to myself. It was a part of me that I never really shared with anyone. And I think that learning to be vulnerable and being able to show that to people has really helped me feel like I don't have to have it all together. Because as soon as you start being vulnerable in your pain with other people, you start to connect on the basis of the shared human experience that we're all feeling that. Yeah. And when we do that, when we open up authentically and we can show people transparently our pain and our messiness, what it does is it really sort of releases that pressure of having to have it all together, because you realize that that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
And I understand that like in our 20s, especially now with social media, and this pressure to like be an entrepreneur, start a business or be a brand or all these things, it's like always in your face. And the thing that I think is going to be the most impactful in terms of getting away from that is having the courage to open up and just be who you are and show that to people with the trust that you're going to receive that in return.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the converse side of that is that doesn't always happen.
Nope.
And that I think is just a time thing. I've taken enough knocks that normally being called a loser on email doesn't do anything at all to me.
Yeah.
Because I've been called that a lot, and so sometimes it really is just like the time and facing exactly what it is you're afraid of over and over and again that desensitizes you to it. That like Lola was just asking the other day if she's at an age where kids her age will make fun of her for liking things that are meant for younger children. She was asking about
that. Okay.
And both Jamal and I, she wasn't in the room, so I gave her an answer, and then I was like, well, we should see what Daddy has to say, and we said the same thing, but we were both like, yeah, like whatever you do, someone's going to make fun of you.
No matter what.
And so like the hard part is figuring out who you are and liking that, and that's worth way more of your energy than figuring out how not to get made fun of, because you're going to get made fun of. Like people who don't like themselves make fun of people. That's a thing.
Yep. Well, then I would say, authenticity practice is probably like a major factor, right? Because it's like authenticity, like, is not a thing that it's not that some people are authentic and some people just are authentic and others aren't. It's not like a thing you have. It's a practice that you show up for every single day.
Yeah.
So showing up and just choosing to authentically show up as who you are and be open about the things that you like and the things that you don't like, and wherever it is that you are in that moment, with the knowledge that some people aren't going to like it, as long as you like it, that's really all that matters.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I'm really cultivating in myself now, like even more so, because I'm becoming more and more polarizing. And that was something that in even the early part of my writing career, I was trying to avoid.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And it's not that I've always been very clear in my opinions, but I'm conscious of how I share them. And it's like this process of like, I'm going to start here and then I'm bringing you over there. And I still do that. But the end result is not we should love ourselves like it used to be. I mean, that's still an end result, but that's not like the primary thing I'm talking about. It's like, it's much more polarizing than that. It's political, it's social justice stuff, and it's stuff I can't bend on. And so, getting used to, like the email today, but really that's a culmination of a lot of really nasty feedback lately. But getting used to being who I am and knowing that means that some people will fucking hate me. That's going to be what my mid-30s is about, pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, and accepting that not everybody has to like you. Mm-mm. That's major, right? Is just like knowing that like it's actually okay not to be liked. And it's not necessarily a reflection on your worthiness.
Right.
It's not a reflection on the other person's worth or value either. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to do that, right? It's easy to look at somebody who like rejects you or doesn't like you and to vilify them. Yeah. Right. But like the problem with that is that as soon as you vilify someone, you victimize yourself. Mm-hmm. And so the major thing for me has been like learning to be like, okay, well, this person doesn't like me. It's not only not a reflection on me, but it's also not a reflection on them. Like, it's actually okay. It's just okay. We're on different paths. We have different values. We see the world in a different way. And you can keep doing you. I might not agree with it, but it's not going to affect how I do me. Is a major thing.
Maybe that's 2018 for me. I don't know.
Hey, that's still a practice. I mean, honestly, I look at people who just like aren't on board with social justice issues, and I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But also, I'm not going to fight with you.
No.
I'm just going to keep doing my work.
I'm with that. I'm having a hard time with like with shit that feels very personal, like you don't agree with my experience kind of stuff. You don't agree that like people that I love should exist, Exactly. So that I have a harder time not seeing as a reflection of that person's character. But it is an indication of a cultural sickness. Anyway, this is a much longer conversation too.
It's a different episode.
Oh my
I think
God.
It's an indication of the fact that there's just like there are too many people in the world.
Just too many of us. We've gone awry.
We've gotten to this point where we've just multiplied so much that now there's like all these different ways of, showing up in the world. And some of them are dangerous. Mm-hmm. Some of them are dangerous. To bring up Brene Brown again in her last book, Rising Strong, she talks about doing your best, which is a concept that like I talk about a lot in my work, that I started to learn back in my 20s when I read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, which is interesting how it loops back to this topic. Is that the first time I read that book, I was in my early 20s.
Same.
Yeah. Weird. And then I read it again in my early 30s, totally different impact. Mm-hmm. Totally different impact. It was like reading a whole different book. And I've read it so many times, and every time I read it, it's like now the whole book is highlighted in different colors because it's just like at the time I read it, that was the thing that resonated with me. But this concept of doing your best was something that, started to resonate with me when I read Don Miguel Ruiz. So when I'm reading, Brene Brown and she's talking about doing your best, how, everybody's doing their best, but she talks about how some people's best is dangerous.
Yeah.
And those people have to go to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a really like interesting way, but like a really sort of radical way. It's radical acceptance. It's radical acceptance of human beings when you recognize that everyone is doing their best, but just because your best is dangerous doesn't mean we have to accept it. You have to go somewhere.
Consequences to your best.
There are consequences to your best. But it is I think it's a very liberating way of seeing the world, in understanding that like, that person's doing the best with the skills and the tools and the knowledge that they have available to them, or their emotional blockages or their, maybe even their intellectual capacity. Like they're doing the best they can, but their best doesn't have to be something that I accept.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So maybe tools for this person, like things that we would recommend someone who is in their 20s or 30s or 40s or anywhere in their lifespan and feel like they don't have it together. And off the top of my head, I think that while we've talked about some of the dangers of social media, I think that there's some really positive things you can get from social media, specifically in finding people that actually resonate with you, not resonate with what you think you should be doing, which takes a little bit of self-exploration. But, I don't follow anything that has fitspiration, and I am okay with a nuanced approach to that whole idea. But it's not for me. I do like fitness, and I like seeing how people are working out. So I follow fitness professionals that I know, that I like their personalities, that post, workouts and mindset stuff. You don't follow the people with the perfect house, but you might maybe you would enjoy a feng shui account if you were thinking about rearranging, you know what I mean? But like exploring your interests via social media as opposed to exploring only things you think you should aspire to.
Exactly. And I think also using social media as a means for connection as opposed to comparison is major. And I think that's basically the same idea. Yeah. Is that you can connect with people on social media. You can find your people, right? Like people who get you, who maybe you live. I know a lot of people who struggle because they live in an area where they're insulated or, they're in a bubble and they don't have people around them who speak their language or, understand their, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, or aren't aligned with their value system. And so you can find that on social media. And so, looking at social media as a means for connection as opposed to a means for comparison, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. And find like a niche group on there. My friend Malati has the raddest niche groups, but she's in one that is for female doctors who lift weights.
That is
moms.
And moms. A lot. Very,
so
very
awesome.
niche.
And that's like so much to have in common.
Yeah.
And she's always talking about like stuff that's happening in that group, like things that, come up and, things that are specific to all of the demographics that they represent. It's really awesome. So like there are great things about that so long as you're using it in a way that's healthy for you, So if you're working on something and that feels like something you want to be working on, find somebody who doesn't represent the perfection of that, but the growth process of that, and follow them. There's lots of options to feel like you're a part of someone's journey, and someone can be a part of your own journey as opposed to the other stuff, as opposed to the comparison stuff, as opposed to feeling like you have it all together. And also just realize that like there's not really an all together. The most together I ever feel is when my dishes and laundry are both done at once. And then like 10 minutes later, that's all out the window.
Yeah. You really do get to decide what all together means for you. Yeah. That's a personal thing. It's one of those things where it's like, like you said, when you do think you have it all together and it's just going to unravel again. Yeah. So maybe having it all together is accepting the unraveling. Yeah. For me, having it all together is being able to release from outcomes. That's the major thing for me. It's still something that I work on constantly, and I still find myself doing it. I launch a project. I have a goal. That goal doesn't work out, or it doesn't, I don't reach that goal, and I'm like, well, I'm a failure, or I suck. I'm a loser. Like those are the feelings that come up for me. And it's like, well, no, you did the work. You made the thing, you followed through, you did what you felt was right, and you can't do anything else other than that. You can't control the outcome. You can just do your best. You just do the best you can. So letting go of outcomes, I think was major for me. Like that was one of the huge things that I learned from my 20s, letting go of perfection and being able to be vulnerable. And most importantly, being able to align myself with my current value system and my current passions and desires and needs, and knowing that can always change. Yeah. And it has changed so many times over the last 15 years. Yeah.
And to echo that, I think for me, a lot of it is also just acknowledging that like hardships change, struggles change, feelings change. They're not residences. They're not permanent places to live. they come and go, and some of them stay for a while. There are themes and seasons, but because I'm depressed today or anxious today or angry today does not mean that that will be the case in an hour. And it doesn't mean that there's something bad or wrong about the way that I'm feeling right now either.
Yeah, I think it's that whole idea of like releasing any permanence, you know? And I think that the older you get, the more aware you become of your mortality. And I think that that's probably something that feeds into letting go of permanence, because you realize that life isn't even permanent, right? You just become more face to face with your mortality. And so it gives you this freedom of like letting go of, this is how it's always going to be. You know, I'm depressed and I'm going to be depressed forever. You know, I'm broke and I'm going to be broke forever. Right.
This is how I am.
This is how it is. This is how it's always going to be. It's like, have you seen the video? If you haven't, and if you're listening to this and you haven't watched this YouTube video, it's one of the funniest YouTube videos I've ever seen, but it's an older one. It's Daniel at the dentist.
No.
It's this video where this kid Daniel, he's probably like Lola's age, maybe a little bit younger. His dad takes him to the dentist and he gets, anesthesia. So he's like super loopy, and his dad is recording him in the back seat while he's like all loopy on these meds. And it is the funniest thing. And at one point the kid has this like very sort of interesting moment of clarity where he realizes that he's like not,
lucid.
Yeah, he's not lucid. And he says, "Is this going to be forever?" He's just like feeling this, he's totally high. He's not lucid. He's loopy. He doesn't know what's going on, but he has this moment where he realizes that he's this way. And he's like, is this how it is from now on?
Right.
It's just, is this going to be forever? And so that's like a big joke in our home where we always talk about that. Like when something sucks, we're like, is this going to be forever? Because it's not going to be forever. The anesthesia is going to wear off and you're just going to go back to regular Daniel before the dentist, like that's
right.
That. And when you can learn to accept that, I think that promotes a lot of freedom in terms of like who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing and having it all together. Cause you're like, oh, even if you have it all together, that can go away too.
Yeah.
Whatever that means, whatever having it all together looks like for you, that's not permanent either.
Right. Here we are, fucking it up, getting some stuff together, doing our best.
Doing
20s,
our
30s,
best,
etc.
Yeah, that's all you can do. I mean, if you take one thing from this episode, no matter what, decade of your life you're living in, I think it's that, like, just do the best you can and know that there's always options.
Yeah.
There are always options. It's really about like getting in tune with like what you want, what your best is at the time, what you want for your own life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for listening. We're about an hour here. Quick word from our sponsors. If you're into the podcast, we don't have sponsors yet, but we would love to have you write us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes. That helps us be visible and get more people involved in the Nasty Women Radio movement. Thanks for listening.